This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I welcome Terry Grahl, founder of Enchanted Makeovers. Enchanted Makeovers' mission is to transform long-term shelters for women and children into places of peace and possibility throughout their 6 different programs. Terry herself dealt with homelessness and other difficulties as a child and then went on to become a successful interior designer. After years of having a successful interior design business, Terry decided to use her talent for a greater purpose and to help others. And so Enchanted Makeovers was born. Enchanted Makeovers has 6 different programs. Their main program is Shelter Transformation, which is where Enchanted Makeovers transforms the physical space that these women and children are living in to be enchanted, whimsical places where they can dream of the future and hope for all the good things to come. Next up, they have their Sacred Sewing Rooms, a place for women and children to learn and to create. Then there's Capes for Kids, which is a cool program where they actually get volunteers around the world to make and donate capes for kids. Many of these children have had to face unimaginable circumstances. They've escaped with their mothers from domestic violence and other dangerous situations. They are in the shelters trying to rebuild their lives, and this is the program that brings wonder and awe back into the lives of these children. Then there is the Patch Project, which is connected to their Capes for Kids program and is their most simple way to volunteer with your creativity. You make a patch with a heart inside, which is included with the Capes for Kids. And once the cape is delivered, the children are able to write their names inside the heart, which is really cool. There is also the doll adoption. Children in shelters are paired with beautiful handmade dolls donated by crafters from around the world. And then lastly, there is the traveling pillowcases. A humble pillowcase can transform the way women and children see their shelter bed by turning it into a place to travel away from your circumstances and into your dreams. These bright and patterned pillowcases are handmade with love. The Traveling Pillowcase Project will remind every woman and child the wonderful power of their minds and how this one amazing tool can bring happiness and joy even through the hardest times. All of these programs are working together to transform the lives of women and children. Enchanted Makeovers is such an incredible organization, and Terry is such a phenomenal and inspiring woman. You do not want to miss this episode. Here's my conversation with Terry. Terry, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to have you on the podcast, and I'm so honored and thrilled to be sitting here in the home of Enchanted Makeovers. So thank you so much. I got to do this really cool tour, and you showed me all around and talked to me about all the different projects. And so I'm so excited to share the great work that you're doing with our listeners. And I know that they're going to want to get involved in your work. I know that you don't just work here in Michigan, you work all across the country. And so we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that. But before we do, I love stories and I love the evolution of the person, you know, how we end up getting to where we are and working on the work and the projects that we're doing, the women that we highlight on this podcast, the nonprofit organizations. I'd love to rewind and start with your own story. So could you share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and I guess how you got into design?
Oh, geez, where do I start? Well, my family moved to Taylor in 1976. And my mom and dad are still in the same home. And when I moved out, got married, had 4 children, I remember telling my mother that I wanted to start a decorating business, but it wouldn't be about decorating. It would be about giving women hope. And that was residential houses. From there, just that one day, that phone call in December 2006, asking if I'll just volunteer and paint a wall at a shelter.
Tell that story. So you get this call and you're working in design, you're going around and designing people's spaces. So talk about your business and then tell me about that day when you got that phone call.
Well, my very first client, I remember it was my brother's employee. So he said, why don't you go in her house and do a redesign? So I remember walking in there, and she's a flea market fanatic like me. And I remember seeing all these things sitting around. And when you are a flea market fanatic, you take the item home, you have to wash it, and you find a little sacred spot in your home. Well, her stuff was kind of scattered. And I just felt like the space was just, there was a sadness, but I didn't know her story. So I redesigned her living room, and I left a note on her counter, and I said, let me heal your home. I received a call about 2 days later, and she said, yes, please heal my home. And I just started in her kitchen with painting. It was handmade curtains. I remember praying in her kitchen for her. By the time we were done with the kitchen, it led to that she wanted her guest room to be redone. And I said, what do you want in there? And she says, I want it to be about my grandmother, because her grandmother raised her. And she said there was a poem she always read to me. And she always, on Sundays, she always made cookies. So she had her teapot. So I said, okay, I got enough here that I can work with. So I had fake little cookies, chocolate chip cookies made. And they were on a plate, and her teapot on the dresser. And that poem was made and put on the wall. It was kind of like a meditation room that she could go in, and it was all full of light. And from there, I asked her, I said, we need to name your home. And she said, I want to name it High Hopes. So I had a sign hung outside, and then I moved on with other clients.
And your business just continued to grow.
Yes, it was clients that wanted shabby chic, cottage style, or rustic style. It was just everything that's grandma's, treasures and handmade and a little bit of new.
Yeah. So your business is thriving, and then you get this phone call asking you to go paint a wall in a shelter. Can you share that story?
Yes. When David called me in December of 2006, he said, will you please just come and paint one wall? Nothing's ever been done to the shelter. And I said, I'll visit after Christmas. So it was January 2007. I visited the shelter, and I did the whole tour, and the last stop was the women's dorm. And I remember walking up the stairs, and everything was painted in this chocolate brown. Even the trim around the windows and the door. And remember, this is a post office. And the door was very heavy. She had to push it open with two hands. And I remember walking into the dorm, and there was 30 women that would stay for 1 year with their children. And the walls were covered in duct tape. The baby cribs, duct tape. The ceiling, the lights were hanging by wires. I asked the director, where did these bunk beds come from? And she said they were donated from a prison. I said, what about the bedspreads? They came from a nursing home. I'm all about repurposing and saving something, but there was nothing in there that we could repurpose. It was, I felt in that moment that everything the women were feeling, they were visually seeing. I took before pictures, and I said to the director, I don't know if there's anything I can do. And I just left. I just remember driving home that day and just arguing with God, saying, why did you bring this to me? I don't want to do this. I have my decorating business. I have my 4 children. And at that time, you used your camera to take pictures. So you had to download the pictures. So I let a whole week pass, and I just felt this urgency that I need to look at these photos. And I downloaded them, and the last photo was 2 pillows. One pillow had polka dots. I've loved polka dots since I was a child. And when I saw those polka dots, I heard, trust me. And in that moment, I just put my right hand up in the air, and I said, I'll do it. Had no clue how I was going to get the money, the volunteers, how I never had volunteered ever.
Well, I think about that visual just sharing about the shelter, and I think that's the experience that so many people experience living in that every single day. And you're already coming out of sometimes an abusive situation or homelessness, and this is kind of your next step. as you're moving through life and trying to get your feet back on the ground, and how depressing it must already be. And then to be there with these brown walls and stuff that was donated from a prison, and like it probably feels like living in a jail or prison. And how can someone have hope in those moments? I know that people do. They find the hope, right? People are so resilient, especially women. Women are so resilient, but we all can relate to that, right? When your sheets are fresh and clean and your room is painted a bright color, you get excited to wake up in the morning, or you get excited to go to bed. But it must be so difficult for so many people that are living in these shelters or living in these transitional homes. They get what they're given. And so you're changing that. You really have started a revolution through Enchanted Makeovers. So you said in that moment, all right, I'll do it. I didn't know. So to me, that's kind of the spark moment of when Enchanted Makeovers started. Can you talk about the next steps? How did you move from that moment? And then you started doing these makeovers, and then it grew and grew and grew and evolved. But take me from that moment, that day when you were like, all right, I'll do it. And how did Enchanted Makeovers start from there?
Well, the day I said, yes, I will do this, I did my little design board like I did for my clients. And I went back to the shelter, and they had all the women from transitional housing plus the shelter in the chapel. So I presented my little design board. And at that time, I used to braid my hair. So you can imagine this young woman with pigtails. And he had women standing, leaned against the wall. And I shared this because they had every right to doubt and think that who in the hell does this woman think she is? Because there was so much disappointment. There was rooms without doors on them that, groups went there and they never finished. And I remember standing there, and I shared how this is what I hope for. I can't guarantee that we can get all this for you. And then I broke down. I just started the ugly cry, and the women began to cry with me. And in that moment, I realized that it was all of us just walking together on this journey. And it continues like that. It was nothing about me there to help you. I was the student. I've been a student through this process. And there's times I have to be the teacher. And I just went out. When I left, I did ask the women what they would like. And I remember one lady telling me, you would think, you think of a better bedspread, or maybe there's artwork. She said, I just want a hook to hang my wet towel. So when I left, I actually drove to a paint store, and the lady in the office pushed her chair out, and she said, I don't have time for you. And I did another ugly cry in the car, and I said, okay, wipe your tears, and you're going to go to another store. And I just kept going. And then I remember sending a bunch of emails out. It was just before my birthday. And the women needed new mattresses. So that was 30 mattresses. And I thought, well, I'm just going to send them to every mattress company, and I'm just going to share my heart. That's all I have to give. And I got a call the day of my birthday. I remember waking up, and before my feet touched the floor, I said, I don't want anything for my birthday. I want the largest donation today. And I got a call from a mattress company, and it was the owner of the company. He says, I'm in Mexico right now. My wife said, you should really check your emails. And I saw your email. And I've been brought up that if you can do something, you need to do it. I'm going to donate all those mattresses and all the pillows for those bunk beds. And from there, it truly been divine appointments and divine timing with every donation. And that continues for 16 years.
Yeah, it's incredible where it's gone. And I'm sure it's going to just continue to grow and evolve in so many different ways. But it's just so powerful to me to think about that day when you're like, all right, I'll do it. And that's the story of so many people. We get dreams that are placed on our heart, and then we get scared, or we don't know how to do it, or I don't have the funding to do the thing. And the reality is sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of the other, and the right people will come in your path. And that's exactly what you've seen. And I know that you continue to see it every single day through the work that you're doing. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl, REVO. We're on TikTok at One Girl Revolution, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at One Girl Revolution. That's the number One Girl Revolution. You can find all of our social media links, previous podcast episodes, our Emmy-nominated documentary series, and more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. For people that are listening, what is Enchanted Makeovers? Tell me all about the great work that you're doing.
Well, first off, I want to explain those two words because I was asked this many years ago. It is childlike faith. It is seeing God in all the unexpected places, and it is hope. That's what those two words mean. As far as the mission, it's really bringing people to serve with their talent. So if you love to quilt, we don't want you to collect sheets. We want you to quilt. We have women that embroider pillowcases, and the words are, I am worthy, I am loved. We are passionate about handmade curtains. Anything we can make, we want made, because I believe that handmade is healing. It's healing for the giver and the receiver. The only thing really new we accept is sheets and towels. But it's really touching the lives of the giver too, because what we've realized over the years is they're battling with so much stuff. It's either domestic violence or they have escaped human trafficking, but they want to give back. So how can it be one-sided? Because if it becomes one-sided, then you're really not giving any power to the women also, because they have a story to share. So it has to be full circle, that all stories are shared.
So for people that are listening, with Enchanted Makeovers, you actually go to shelters, you go to transitional homes. It kind of looks like a lot of different things for people. You mentioned survivors of human trafficking, survivors of domestic abuse. So there are many different housing situations that they could end up in. And you actually go to those places and you help kind of refresh their rooms to make it, thinking back to that first story that you shared about the bunk beds and how they were donated from a prison. You're going in and you're saying, all right, let's make this beautiful. Let's make this space where they're living and staying beautiful and fresh. Talk about that.
Well, I call it a healing space, because there is healing when you, I don't know if you ever had received anything handmade.
Yes.
Okay, so you know how it feels.
Yes.
So imagine that in an entire room, that you have a quilt that you're covered up with, and a pillowcase that's handmade with this powerful statement. You have artwork made by hand and it's not manufactured. The curtains are all handmade. And then you have murals that surround you. That is a sacred space and a healing space. It's not about taking everything out of a bag full of, a comforter. It's a journey. This is not Extreme Makeover Edition. Mm-hmm. It's a journey for all. And I've always saw it as that we have to start outside the shelter, which is transforming the community, because it's different once they get into the shelter of how they serve. Mm-hmm. And I've shared it with you today, is that when we change the way we serve, it changes the way we see each other.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. It's so true. And you're walking with these women and their children in so many different ways and hearing their stories. And I'm sure there are stories that just absolutely break your heart. But then there are also stories that bring you so much joy, especially when you see women recognize that they are a warrior. I love walking around the space here and seeing the patches, I am a warrior. Because
yes.
Women need to be reminded of, we all need to be reminded of that. But because we're talking about One Girl Revolutions, it's like we need to be reminded that we're not a survivor. We talked about a story earlier. I shouldn't be defined by something that happened to me.
Your circumstance is not your identity.
Yes, but I am a warrior. And imagine how differently the world would look if every single woman saw those words and knew those words and, like, in the core of her being walked with those words.
Yes.
How differently we would live our lives. So I love seeing those patches all around, and I think that's so powerful.
Yes, and that's included because we have our sacred sewing room. So that came about from my mother just sharing with me many years ago how a sewing machine saved her life. And my mother battles with depression. She wants me to share the story because there's many that do. And she just said it saved my life. She's, when I sew, I escape. And there is no pain. And I knew I had to have this program with Enchanted Makeovers. So it's called the Sacred Sewing Room. And we don't donate machines. We donate a program. So a shelter has to give up a room, and they have to have volunteers that come in and volunteer to teach sewing. But it's most importantly, that is therapy. That's a way to express yourself, to have a voice is when you're creating something. So one of our shelters we transformed was in St. Louis, and the doctor ran the shelter, and she started her therapy in the sewing room. She changed it from just her little office. So that's the power of just that creativity and imagination that's lacking in many shelters.
Yeah. I was thinking as we were walking through here about Najah Bazi from Zaman International, and she's an amazing woman that we've had on the podcast, and she teaches the women and children that come through her programming. They do a lot of different things at Zaman International, but one of the things is every single woman that comes through, they help them with job placement, but they teach them to do two things, and that's sewing and cooking, because she's like, everybody needs to know how to sew, even just to like mend, a hole you have in your dress or something. It's like, that is such a great skill for women to know and learn just for their everyday lives. But some of them can turn it into a job as well. So it's just amazing what that is providing for people. So you're going into shelters, you're doing these refreshes of the beautiful rooms, that you're turning these rooms into beautiful spaces for these women and their children. You're putting these sewing rooms, these sacred, you called it sacred,
sacred,
sacred sewing room in these spaces. And then you also have a really cool project about capes. Tell me about that.
Yes, that came about just watching TV one day, and a mother from New York, New Jersey was on the news, and she shared with her son to give it up. No one's going to come here and save us. And I instantly started crying, because I understand if you have no hope, how can you give hope to your child? So there was no judgment there, but instantly I saw the child, that he was his own hero. He had everything within him. So I reached out on social media and I said, can someone make 25 capes? So a woman reached back and she said, I'll make the 25 capes. They came back to Michigan, and then I went back to the first shelter that we ever did just to see the children's reaction. And they began to speak and to laugh and to twirl. And I knew in that moment we needed to have this as a program. So it's organically grown, the mission, with each program.
And you've had so much support from different businesses that have jumped on board to help with this, and it's just continued to grow and evolve with the capes. So do you give them out to every kid, or how does that kind of happen?
The capes go out nationally, and the children get to pick their cape. We never choose the cape. Our latest cape that we received as a donation has come from Sweden.
Wow.
Yes. So we get international capes that arrive, and they go out. So, and our youngest volunteer to make a cape, because we have a no-sew and a sewing pattern, so everyone can participate. The mother shared her daughter's 1 year old. She said, of course I helped her, but she's 1. So it's the youngest is 1 to the oldest has been 99.
Wow.
That has volunteered. Yes.
That's amazing. And the reality is every single person can do something. That's what we talk about so often on this podcast is, we all have time, talent, and treasure at different points in our life. But what I love about the capes is everybody can do it. Like you said, there's
Yes.
even a no sew. Even if you don't know how to sew, you can still make a cape. Or like how incredible that would be for a family, for the kids at night to work on their capes to give to other children. It's just so cool. What a cool program.
Yes, thank you.
So how do you get connected to the women and children that you serve?
Well, once again, I'm going to go back to, it's literally been divine appointments. And I use that word a lot because that's how it's happened. So we visited a shelter, and we had to do a tour, and it was a volunteer that was sharing, the shelter. And I remember the director coming out, and she said, oh, who are you guys? And I said, well, we're Enchanted Makeovers, and we want to see your space. And she said, you're not going to believe this. I had a dream the night before that someone would come in here and bring light and hope to our rooms. And I looked at her and I said, this is where we're supposed to be. I didn't even finish seeing the shelter. That was enough for me. That's where I need to be.
That's amazing. So you just continue to get connected to these different shelters. Do people cold call you and reach out?
Yes, we do get calls. We get emails. It's literally just that, we always say it's a small world.
Yeah.
That's how it's worked out, is that, okay, now we need to go to Kentucky. We need to go to Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. And that's how it's worked out. It's been beautiful.
Do you ever get individuals that reach out to you that are like, hey, I'm here, I need help? Or is it mainly through shelters?
It is shelters. Obviously, we do work with, there is homes that women stay that have escaped human trafficking. So that's still under our bylaws that we can help them. But yeah, I've had even my old clients that have reached back out and said, can you help me with my home? And I said, I no longer do that anymore. So they're still calling.
Yeah, you're too busy though with everything going on with Enchanted Makeovers. So this podcast is all about stories. And I know that you have so many stories over the years that you could share. But is there a story or two of people that have been helped through Enchanted Makeovers that you feel like really encapsulates the power of what you're doing every single day?
I remember when I went back to the first shelter and I was in the hallway and her name was Donna, and she ran down the hallway and hugged me. And she said, you're not going to believe what happened. She's, I'm now in transitional housing and I see the light coming through my window. Another mother shared with me how I said, what are you most looking forward to now that you've went through this 1-year program? And she said, just to make a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup for my 2 children.
It's the little things, right?
Yes, it's still, I never have forgotten those stories.
Mm-hmm. We always think, oh, I have to do something big, right? Like I have to found a nonprofit organization, or I have to help every single person. I couldn't possibly help every single woman and child that are going through these shelter or different home situations. But the reality is we can all do something, and it's usually the little things. And it's so important for each and every one of us to pay attention to our surroundings, know our neighbors, know what they're going through. How can we help them with whatever they're going through? But also get in touch with your local shelter, or if there is an organization in your local community or nationally, those organizations need support too. I know that you guys work nationally, and maybe you're working in someone's community in a certain area and they can get involved in the work that you're doing. But it's just so important for each and every one of us to do something. And usually it's the small things, right? I'm so excited to make soup for my children, or I just can sleep better at night. I can actually sleep at night because they're wrapped up in this cozy quilt that someone else made for them. I just can imagine the love that each of these women and these children feel. And you showed me, as we kind of walked through the headquarters here, you showed me one of the rooms that is set up, and you showed me the kind of the before and after photos of some of the things, and I'll make sure that I post it on social media. I'll post some pictures so people can see and just get a visual for the great work that you're doing. But it really is the darkness to light. These women and these children are going through hell and back, right? And then they end up in a shelter and they're just happy to even have a bed, a safe place to be. But then you go in and you just fill it full of love, and you're giving away these like capes for little kids to just imagine what's possible. I saw a quote the other day talking about, it's impossible. And it's like, well, no, that quote actually is I'm possible. And it shows people what's possible. And so I think even having these rooms, these beautiful, cozy rooms that now these women and children are living in, staying in, that it's helping them to see what's possible, which is so beautiful, and giving them hope.
Absolutely. And I just want to share with the listeners that I always say that what are tears if there's no action? Wipe those tears and take some action.
Yeah, we see things right on the news and it's like it brings you to tears, or you see someone who's experiencing homelessness on the street and it brings you to tears, and it's like, no, to your point, we can all do something, and we need to be active and be the change we want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
Watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series featuring The Girl Inside and In Tandem on our website or on our YouTube channel today. Check out onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com today. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel for our documentaries, videos, and podcast episodes. So Terry, if you could get to the very root of what drives you every single day, because I know there are some days that it's really fun and exciting and you're going in, especially on those days where you do the reveal and, you know, these women and children get to see their cozy new room, but you're also having really hard days, I know, and sometimes heartbreaking when you're hearing these stories from women and children. If you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, what's driving you every single day. Also, you're doing so much work. And so I'm sure there are some days where you're like, I can't carry this. It's really hard. What is the root of what makes you want to keep doing this work?
I would have to say, because she is me.
Talk about that. I've seen that around this space, because she is me.
Yes. Well, I might have never experienced human trafficking, but I've experienced pain in dark days. And isn't that enough to stand with women and say, I'm not here to save you. We're just going to walk together. And that's what she is me means.
And your 800 number,
yes,
tell the people, because that's really powerful to me.
It's 855. She is me.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, and that's what's so important about each and every one of us. We all have our own stories, and we all have our pain and suffering that we've gone through in our lives, and we can walk with one another, and how powerful it is when women stand together. And that's what this podcast is all about. That's what One Girl Revolution is all about. Of course, we're highlighting the stories of inspiring one girl revolutions, but the power truly is when we stand together. And I imagine the work that you're doing, you must be so proud, almost like a proud mama sometimes, to hear these stories of women when you met them and then they've gotten out of the shelter. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. So this is exciting. So in the beginning, after we did the first transformation, I just felt a pull that I wanted to interview the women, because that was the biggest thing they share with me is we are grateful for the roof over our head and the food, but no one ever wants to listen to us. So I did little YouTube videos, and that was way back like in 2008. And I got permission, the director was like, this is great, let's do this. And the women knew that they were going to go on YouTube, and their hope was to make a difference and change someone else's life with their story. So one of the ladies, she was sitting there in the cafeteria, and she shared her story of her father. He was selling the food stamps. So there was no food. So she had to go out and pretty much sell herself to take care of her brothers and sisters. I mean, kind of brings tears when I think about it, because I remember her child sitting in a high chair next to her. And she said that I thought that's all I was good for. She said, I was only 12. That's how much I felt of myself. Fast forward, so she went through that whole program with that dorm transformed. And I was at a fundraising event, and I saw her. And she started hugging me. She goes, you're not going to believe it. I'm back in college. I'm in college now. And I shared that video that you taped of me. And I had a standing ovation from the students.
Wow.
Yes, just from that YouTube video. Yes.
It's the power of stories, right? One Girl Revolution, we did our documentary, The Girl Inside, and we went and interviewed these 5 incarcerated women at Cook County Jail and a professor that taught a storytelling class. And the storytelling class was called Storytelling as a Healing Art. And the whole vision behind it, the whole purpose behind it was, how can you move beyond something that's happened to you or something that you've done if you don't know how to talk about it, and how healing that is. And so that's so beautiful that these women are sharing their stories with you, and that you're able to capture history. That's one thing that I've started thinking about with One Girl Revolution, is not only are we a podcast, not only are we doing these documentaries, but women are making history every single day. They're changing the world, and we're really capturing history. In that story, you were able to capture history of this incredible woman's story, you know, a chapter. It was only one chapter of her story, but now to see her thriving and that she's been able to share where she came from and look at where I am now. It's just so empowering.
Yeah. And that was just a nudge in my heart that I really fully didn't understand why, but I'm like, okay, I'll do this. It was another, yes, I'll do this. And that shelter had actually a men's program attached. And there was a gentleman saying, can I share my story? And I said, of course. That was the first time he shared. He didn't even share it with the therapist there, that how he was molested.
Wow.
He shared it with me the first time, and he knew it was going to go on YouTube. He said, I can't hold this in anymore. And when he was done, he said, can I sing you a song? And he sung Amazing Grace to me.
Oh, wow.
So that was really big for me too.
Yeah. It's the importance of us sharing our stories too, because it gives other people hope, but also it gives other people, I guess, the understanding that they're not alone, right? Oh, other people have been through that. And so even when we share the difficult things in our lives, it's so important because we might be able to give someone else courage to stand up and share their stories and know that it's not shameful or it's not, you know, it's like, no, we've all gone through difficult things in our lives. So,
yes.
Terry, where does Enchanted Makeovers go from here? I know you have big plans. You don't have to share all of the things, but where do you hope that Enchanted Makeovers goes from here? And what impact do you hope that the work continues to make on the world?
I guess I can share part of this, but I'm working on a children's book.
Wow.
Yes, and
amazing.
It's with the illustrator already.
Okay.
So that should be out in September.
Amazing. We will be sure to promote it and follow everything with that. Okay, so you're working on a children's book.
Yes, I have 3 stories already written, ready to go to the illustrator. So it'd be a series.
Okay.
And it's all the programs, but it's all animals that tell the story and what it truly means for each program.
That's so cool. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to follow that. I can't wait to see the children's book. So for Enchanted Makeovers, talk to me about the work and what do you have coming up? What's your big hope and dream for how the organization continues to evolve and grow?
Well, I can't name the companies, but we've got some big partnerships with national companies that's going to be coming out soon.
That's amazing.
Yes, and that's all I can really share about that.
Well, but you want to like go to other states, I'm sure, and you hope to help more people.
Yes, the biggest thing really is changing hearts and minds. And I think these children's books, the publisher read the first story and I said, how did you feel? And she said, I felt at peace and loved. And my great niece, she's 8 years old, and she read the story. And my sister was videotaping her. Because I thought maybe she like staged. I'm like, did you really? I swear to you, I taped her to read her reading it and her reaction. And when she was done, she put the paper up to her heart and she said, I feel loved. So you have a woman in her, I believe she's in her 60s, to a girl at 8 years old that felt the same reading a child's book.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to read it and I can't wait to promote it on One Girl Revolution. And I'm so excited to see where Enchanted Makeovers continues to go from here. I know that you've helped so many people. You've served so many women and children throughout the years. And I know that you're just going to continue to grow and evolve. And unfortunately, the need is so huge out there. And so your work is just going to continue to grow and evolve. And it's great to hear that different companies are supporting you. And I know that you have individuals that step in and support in different ways. Like you mentioned before, if you're a sewer, you could sew quilts, you could sew capes. There's so many different ways for people to get involved. But how can people get involved in your work and how can they support what you're doing?
The biggest thing is reach out and just share what you love. Because we've had women that, for instance, there's companies that their whole company is just about paint. And I said, let's collaborate. How can we get awareness out there? And that's happening. That's some of the little things behind the scenes that's going to be happening. So it's really just reach out to me. You know, tell me about yourself. What do you love to do? And let's see how we can collaborate.
Yeah, there's such a big need and there are so many different ways that people can get involved. So I encourage people to reach out. Use your talents to help and be a part of this incredible organization. People can also, of course, donate. They can donate money, they can donate products. So if, they happen to run a business that, I know you mentioned the story of the mattresses, right? If somebody has a mattress company and they want to donate that, or if they have furniture or different things, they can reach out to you. I always tell people, I'm like, don't just send stuff. Reach out and
please
say,
reach out first.
Reach out and say, hey, this is what I can do. And I just believe, I'm a firm believer that there are no coincidences. And even if at the time you might not need, 30 mattresses, for instance, at some point you will. And so making that connection. And so I encourage everyone who's out there, donate in any way that you can. Follow on social media. I always say on this podcast that the free and easy way to support anything that's going on, any of these organizations that we highlight, any of these women that we highlight, just to follow and share their mission. It's a free and easy way to get involved and support the work, but you also never know who might see it. So maybe there's somebody out there that is in need, or a shelter might come across it and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know about Enchanted Makeovers. And so we have such a power with social media to connect people and to be the great connectors. So I can't wait to continue to follow. I will be sure to put all of your social media links and your website and everything in the show notes so people can easily get in touch with you, Terry. But before I let you go, I always end this podcast on 2 questions. So one, we'll start with, you are a one girl revolution. You are changing the world every single day through your life. I know there are so many other incredible women who are a part of Enchanted Makeovers too. Your CEO, so many other great women. But who is a one girl revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
Absolutely. It's my mom. She's the warrior. She's the one that taught her children to use that creativity and that imagination it's empowered us. It's a survival skill, and I continue to use it.
Well, it's so beautiful to be here. I feel like, it's enchanted. Everything that you do, it is so magical, and we have such power in our lives to be that for other people. And my mom, you and I bonded over our moms because my mom was that way too. She was so whimsical and magical and, always singing these songs, and in difficulties in life, I always reflect on that. It's like she trained me from a young age to be a warrior, but also to see magic in all things. And truly, we are magic. We were created to be these beacons of hope and light in the world. And you truly are that, Terry. And I know your mama is as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So last question that we always end this podcast on is, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I would just have to say to them, start each day with, I am worthy. I know that's more than one word, but we can curse ourselves in so many ways with the words. We can either uplift a life with a word or destroy it, and just watch what we say to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking over at the patch. I am a warrior, to remind every single woman and girl that's out there that they are warriors, and no matter what they've been through, no matter what they're going through, they're a warrior and they can accomplish anything.
Yes. Amen.
Terry, thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. Thank you so much for hosting me today here at Enchanted Makeovers. It's been so amazing being here and sitting with you. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.